We're going to be starting in the bottom right-hand side of the map on top of that blue player from Team Liquid. He is MaNa.
In the top left for Team Exxon, you have the red Protoss, Gerald. You know, there's been days in the past, some best of 69, some lower bracket MLGs, where if you could overdose on Starcraft, they would have really tested your limits. But I think today is actually, it's possible to overdose, guys. So make sure you're like hydrating and eating, because it started off with a GSL. If you're a fan of the ASL, it also happened, and then it was right into the China playoffs. Now we're in Europe, and then of course North America later on. Gosh, imagine if the ASL, I guess, was on like tonight. Then it would be a full 24 hours of Starcraft.
ZG, I'm gonna throw out a little stat for you as we wait for, you know, the first couple of units to pop out and everything over here in this PvP to really kick off. Is that a pylon on Gerald's side of the map in the natural? Did he just throw down a pylon at the low ground? Oh, that's kind of cute. Sorry, MaNa, I just want to mention this. I think that he was trying to go for like the pylon block over at the wall to just get an idea of what were the first two units coming out. But because he couldn't get that, there was already a probe there blocking the block of the pylon. He actually just throws on the pylon at the low ground and still gets a scat out and sees that it's double adept. Sorry, small move, but I like that.
That's exactly what it was. So, what's your stats?
Yeah, so I think it was, you know, I actually had the number ready and prepared, and then I got distracted, so I forgot the number. But it's basically been about like 6 months where we actually haven't had a single week go by without a premier tournament in StarCraft. It's almost been like 6 months of back-to-back StarCraft 2 between like TSL, the DreamHack seasons, War Chest Team League, the Alpha X events. Like, it's just been non-stop StarCraft Premier events every single week.
That is impressive. Wow,
yeah,
it's a long time. Well, things are starting to get a little bit interesting. Some scouting was done. In fact, a lot of scouting was done when we were just talking about much of nothing. There was the usual phase of PvP where they were probe scouting each other, and then additional scouting in case the probe actually did put down something that was nefarious. Nothing, actually, on the map, right? So both getting Nexus. Difference, Gerald gets a Stargate. And I gotta say, as someone who's watched a decent amount of PvP, I am liking the Stargate opener more and more as just the opening option. You know, not because it does necessarily that much damage, but for the other utility that it provides.
No, I'm definitely with you there. The Stargate opening is super duper clutch, and gonna spot out these adepts, gonna be able to start picking away at them. But I actually want to note that Gerald did something with his adepts. He got the second round of adepts and like sacrificed for no probes whatsoever, but he actually did manage to get into the main base and see there was a shield battery there. And that's actually going to reveal to Gerald that there's probably not much point to just using the Oracle immediately to try and attack across the map, because the Oracle's not going to be able to bypass that shield battery healing. So just using the Oracle defensively, I actually really like that decision.
He also didn't bother getting a second one, right?
Yeah.
So it can be a little more questionable if you get a second one and then doesn't do any damage, although it's like typical that they do some damage when there's two of them. But then it's like, oh, was that too far off of a normal build? You know, was that too much of a dedication? But one Oracle and one Stargate, well, yeah, I mean, it's 300, right? Sounds like it's a lot. What we've seen, and this is why I'm like okay with this opening, is that it doesn't seem to actually push off anything too important. I mean, the fact that it gives you scouting and a little bit of that harassment option means that you can, I guess, more strongly go into a forge. You can more confidently delay your robo because you don't have to worry about needing detection. And that's exactly what Gerald has done here. So he's a delayed robo. He's going to have faster +1. He's actually adding on gateways, though, and this is a potentially crucial difference. So that third Nexus, much faster for MaNa. But Gerald, while he's also going to get his third Nexus, might actually be able to apply some pressure, especially because he also has that +1 lead. It could happen. I mean, he need a Warp Prism because he's not placing down any proxy pylons, but he could try and go out in the map since he has the map covered with the Oracle.
Yeah, it's all that utility that you were talking about that the Oracle is providing, but with relatively even stalker counts, it seems like it's just going to come down to that first big warp in. You see a couple stalkers being warped in right now, but two of the gateways there are going to be finishing up for Gerald. MaNa adding on all of his big gateway floods now. It seems like we might end up having a bit more of a passive PvP. I mean, you look at the end of the day, it's basically like 500 resources lost for both players, roughly. It's been a pretty calm game for the most part.
Yes, it has. Which is becoming, I guess, increasingly more reliable as a macro matchup, which is really weird because a year ago it was the cheesiest matchup ever, actually. So really come a long way. And I think also romanticide really plays into that. Oracle finally finding some direct damage. Actually, 4 probes. A little miscontrolled, though. Ooh, yeah, that was just miscontrolled. Even I think MaNa, Gerald and I made the exact same face when that died. He wants that for the future, not just for now, because this is only scouting, but he also would love to have that for that, period of time where disruptors are huge, before it dies, because eventually I guess it'll get blinked on, right? But I don't know, it's supposed to still kind of live for a while longer than what it did.
No, I'm definitely with you. I think you have to play a bit conservative with it after Blink finishes up for both players, because that's when it really does get a bit dangerous to have it too far out there. But it absolutely has utility in the later stages, whether you are against disruptors or you have disruptors yourself. And speak of the devil, we do have a robotics bay on the way there for Gerald. Not going to be going for charge like MaNa is, and if you guys have seen any of like the PvPs Estrella and Neve have been playing, or a lot of those other PvPs that have been happening in the other matches of the previous days, the group stages, you'll know this ends up being kind of like a big mass gateway style coming out from MaNa, where you really are just trying to apply lots of pressure with a lot of gateway units and Archons, Zealots, Stalkers. And you're up against the disruptors, and it's really just about trying to overpower your opponent with a lot of units in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, make no mistake, this is on purpose. This is a style of play. I mean, he could not have warped in the 5 stalkers, the additional stalkers he has, and then gone into Robotics Bay as well. But he wants to play the style that's very mobile and has proven very effective on our MaNa side. He brought up some of the North American matches, but then last iCast, it was Hellraiser versus Gerald, and Gerald got a he got taught, man. He got taught how to actually defend against this, or I guess he got, well, hopefully he learned. Yeah, I mean, he was schooled, but hopefully he learns from that schooling. I don't know, like the analogy's not working, but he died. Oh, God, and hopefully this doesn't go the same way. Actually, looking aggressively forward on top of this, the Immortal needs to get on the action if it really wants to support the army. It's certainly not doing so now. It still looks like Gerald ends up winning the fight at least well enough that MaNa is going to back off.
Yeah, I was a little bit skeptical also of Gerald doing that aggressive blink forward without the support of the Immortal and everything, but I think that, before all of that, MaNa didn't really have the War Prism with him, so you have to remember the reinforcements for MaNa came in a little bit slower. He also got very temporarily supply blocked right before the attack came in because he had lost a pile on the south side. And I think that those things actually just delayed MaNa from having that extra warp that would have given him the firepower to maybe take on that fight, but now he's going to be a bit on the defensive, losing some stalkers over here on the retreat as he tries to get away desperately from those disruptors. MaNa really needs a bit more time. Where are those charge lots that he had charge already researched for? It looks like he's actually just going for a counterattack with the DTs and the War Prism, but not really getting a whole lot done.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing about getting a faster Dark Shrine. There's like a certain point where, of course, Dark Shrines have to come down in PvP, but getting it any faster than normal is like, not usually they're going to pay off because you need so many DTs to actually bust down a cannon, getting really close to taking the disruptor shot to the face, only losing 1 stalker so far. I believe the disruptors are out of ammo, but the stalkers actually had an upgrade leading to literally just now, so that was still going to be a questionable defense for MaNa. And this is the situation where the non-disruptor player is really in trouble. When their back is against the wall and the disruptor's getting ever so much closer to killing their army, the rest of the army is killing your nexus, that's where things look really bad for the style of play that MaNa is going for. But if he can push back and actually Gerald's going to let up the pressure, then he can take the map again, hopefully.
Yeah, I think actually MaNa was also gearing up in case Gerald decided to stick around there. For the other way, we've seen some Protoss players help deal with this, which is actually just getting those flanking maneuvers with a lot of Zealots or something around. Because disruptors are great when there's one angle of attack that you're dealing with, continuously zoning out your opponent. As soon as you start getting flanked or hit from multiple sides, disruptors really start to see a quick drop off and how effective they can really end up being. But Gerald having pulled back, it looks like he's going to be able to avoid that situation from MaNa. MaNa has a lot of his army supply up in the top right-hand side with those DTs and Zealots warped in. Even the Phoenix is going to be able to find the Warp Prism, be able to deny any additional weapons over there. And now Gerald is finding MaNa totally out of position. MaNa is going to try and cut in from the backside to cut off these stalkers on the retreat. Gerald actually has enough stalkers that he's going to recall. Okay.
That was a really awkward recall, though. That was like kind of half of his army. I mean, maybe more than half, but not by very much. His stalkers, luckily, some of them will also escape without the recall's help, but That was a bit awkward. So question now, is it worth it to kill the Nexus? I mean, taking down an entire Nexus is usually worth, at least 4 Stalkers, right? But I don't know. It also is going to make Gerald kind of retreat back into his shell, and that's where MaNa, again, might have time to get out on the map and do what he wants to do, because he still is deciding not to try and play the Disruptor game. Like, there's, in the past, if you were behind Disruptors, you were kind of desperately playing Gateway style and then trying to fit in a double Robo and catch up on those Disruptors, where now it is just like you choose to do this. You choose to continue building up those Gateways and hopefully finding a moment where your opponent has a weak spot. But so far, it's MaNa with the weak spots.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to note that, again, when you try this no disruptor style that MaNa's going for, when we've seen it be successful is when the player in MaNa's boots is being aggressive. MaNa should be the one that's stomping all over these bases, denying them, slowing things down while he kind of mass expands on the other side. But he has been the one under aggression for most of this game. He's finally able to get a bit more aggressive himself. He's going to go after some of these disruptors. He doesn't quite manage to hit the disruptor that has a shot out there. Loses a lot of his stalkers. The Zealot's coming in much further from behind and actually getting zoned out by these additional disruptor shots. The DTs going ham in MaNa's own base, and it looks like MaNa is just getting totally overwhelmed. The only kind of bright side here is that I don't think it's detection anymore.
Oh my god, the DTs. Oh, well, DTs on both sides, actually. Yeah. I think that Gerald is still getting the better end of the trade as he's going to try and escape away from the Zealots, escape away from the DTs. His own DTs are once again hitting that third Nexus. It looks like it's going to be taken down. This was much closer than it really should have been, honestly. This is starting to get to a really weird game. Only 20 supply lead here for Gerald when it should have been a complete dumpster fire. It is still turning into one, though, as he grabs the Warp Prism and is going to run away from the DTs. Where the hell is the Observer, man? He's building them now. He was waiting for a Colossus to pop out. He's got 2 Colossus and still not in detection. Oh, he finally cleared it up. Oh, God.
Oh boy. Well, it's going to be reduced down to 3 bases over here for MaNa. Gerald's still going to have those 4 bases alive and well, and MaNa does keep alive a handful of these DTs. Has still a bit of a strike force over here, but man, Zombie Grub, I really don't know that MaNa actually has quite the same force that he was hoping for at the end of that, or the same economy that he was hoping for.
Yeah, definitely not the same economy. I mean, geez, his DTs rather should have really... They needed to do more, I think. I mean, they were the reason that he's alive at all, but I think they needed to do more, but he had to pull them back with Gerald's Observer finally arriving to the party. Weird things have happened when it comes to Disruptors, but since MaNa isn't playing with Disruptors, it really doesn't seem likely that this push is going to work. He's going after Colossus that I think just ultimately doesn't really matter. I mean, this is still an interesting choice. Observer is still very much alive for Gerald, and that is going to be a very awkward push for MaNa.
Oh, this is such a do-or-die moment there for MaNa. You can see him holding his head. He knows he needed the 2-0 here in this series in order to advance on from the groups. The map scores were just not quite in his favor. That is going to be GG. Gerald is going to take that first game, and with that first game, actually secure his spot.
Who knows? We got it. Okay, Death Aura. We'll see if this guy can bring it back in the top left. Down 1, he is Team Liquid's MaNa.
And down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player from Team Exxon sitting up 1-0 in this best of 3. He is Gerald.
Clearly for Pillars of Gold, it's a decent-sized map, and there's also that natural ramp that gives it a little more defensive property. Death Aura doesn't have that, but Protoss players, I think, just found that the ramps that we see here, as our Observer shows us, still gives us like a little bit more of defensive properties. There's something about it that Protoss players were experimenting with this, but I gotta be honest, I haven't seen it in a while. It seemed like Death Aura, like, in last season's map pool was kind of that option. If it wasn't Pillars, it was this one kind of thing. But then people just all agreed maybe don't do it, and then just worry about cannon rushes on this map.
Yeah, I'd actually love to pick the brain of someone who's pretty eloquent with like the different meta happenings for Protoss players, like a Hearthstone or something, on kind of the deviations that we've seen with how Protoss players like to open with these forward gateway walls and all this stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll maybe get to see a little bit of the thought process over here if Gerald decides to respond and try and punish this a little bit more. But regardless, we're just actually going to see pretty quick Nexus over there for Gerald. It's kind of trying to match up or catch up with MaNa from the fast Nexus coming out from him. And we'll see this go into a later stage game.
The kind of funny thing about this is, while it's not the standard at all, the Gateway Nexus or Nexus first, it can sometimes just be a trap, right? Like it's kind of like sometimes North American players weren't building their wall off in PvP, and you're like, well, clearly they're going to get adapted to death, and it was actually more of a trap. They're like, no, I predicted this, haha. So actually, I kind of I kind of prefer that Gerald does just react like he does. Like, he's not going to try and bust this down or pylon proxy, which, you know, I guess he could have. But no, he's just going to go for his own Nexus later, of course, but his own Stargate, too, is kind of funny. This is where it's going to be a little more interesting. Who builds the right unit, who actually gets damage done.
Yeah. Cute little move there, by the way, as MaNa tried to move back in with that first probe to get some additional scouting information, and ended up not actually being able to get in because the probe went for the shield battery, not to block out the Adept first, but actually to block out the probe from getting additional scouting. And look at all that, actually, the probe's even pulling off the mineral line, doing a nice job making sure that those Adepts are not able to do anything super early on, but also not to get any information about the fact that, you know, Gerald's also opened up with a Stargate.
Pretty important stuff. I mean, if that did get a scout, then MaNa's getting a Phoenix right now and trying to catch it. 2 Adepts might get a couple more probes. Still might get one more. And that's, remember, extending MaNa's lead since he had the faster Nexus. So that's a 7-worker lead. Not 8-worker lead. There you go.
Yeah, no joke. And, well, oh man, and now MaNa actually saw the Oracle, so he immediately starts with a Phoenix. Guys, Phoenix produce really quick. It's actually like a problem if you've ever played like a MaNa battle or something as Protoss. You're like, I'm gonna make Phoenix, and you're like, I need to make a lot of Stargates for this. And you realize how quick Phoenix make, and you're like, oh, actually, I don't need that many Stargates, because they make so quick, 1 or 2 Stargates is enough. He's gonna have that Phoenix out before the Oracle actually gets to his mineral line, and Phoenix is already done. Oracle's come in for both players. It looks like both of them are actually going to be able to get a bit of damage done over here, but with the shield battery and now the Phoenix, MaNa should be in a really good spot.
Well, if only Death Roar was the first map of today, man. Like, MaNa.
Yeah.
There's such a difference. Like, if nothing else had really happened, you know, if Gerald hadn't taken damage from the Adepts, hadn't taken damage from the Oracle, but then also didn't do much damage, they actually even out the damage from the Oracle, which is so funny. This game, like, is not so bad, but as it is, MaNa still has this incredible worker lead, and he does have the option to kind of go into Phoenix to further control the map, which Gerald can't really do much about. I mean, this kind of 4 Stalker push was a little clever. Maybe it did get something done, but it really didn't. And since he's invested into Blink, he's invested into a little bit of a future macro game, right? Like, how's he really going to get damage done? He's going to try. He's going to send his other Stalkers out, and he's not getting his +1 despite having a Forge.
Yeah, another Oracle's going to go down over there to the Phoenix, and unfortunately for Gerald, yeah, like you said, it was just that little light pressure from the Stalkers at the front that looked like maybe it was going to be able to get something done, but MaNa being able to hold that, there's not a follow-up for that. There was only 2 gateways out there for Gerald. It's not like, oh, you get a proxy piling up and warping a bunch of units. No, that was it. That was going to try to do something, and it didn't really accomplish a whole lot, so now Gerald is just straight up playing from behind. If Gerald can survive long enough, I do think there are some opportunities to come back in the matchup, but Phoenix, I feel like, are one of the hardest styles to come back against, because when you're behind versus the Phoenix, it just feels like, one, you can't move out. You just don't get to move out and put on pressure with a lot of units unless you're okay with just losing most of your economy. And then even on top of that, if you want to go into like the biggest playmaker unit in all of Starcraft 2, the Disruptor, the Phoenix are made to counter the Disruptor. It's like your options just get so limited.
And I think Gerald's best option is to just continue macroing and hope that MaNa doesn't have an opportunity to kill him. You know, like harass him, sure, or get ahead on some things, okay, fine, but don't kill me. And then eventually, like, yeah, I could get to Disruptors, but then more importantly, like a ton of Stalkers, so the Phoenix is no longer just like a direct counter. As far as counters go, they're a pretty hard counter. Absolutely, because all they do is flip the Disruptor and then it's already canceled. But it's been a long time, you know, like thinking back to the Kespa Cup with Neeb. Like, that was one of those times where if you got Phoenix over Disruptors, like, goodbye Disruptor player. We don't see that so much anymore. You know, inevitably it feels like even a Phoenix player, a strong Phoenix player like a Rotterdam would have to go into Disruptors as well. But we'll see what MaNa's doing, because he did go for charge. Like, he's not playing into any normal game, in fact, with no Immortals, no Archons. It is just charge Phoenix and wanting to, I think, specifically punish something like this, where Gerald's like, oh, I have Blink Stalkers, I can move out. No, you can't.
Yeah, to put this in context, guys, we actually have almost double the army supply for MaNa now. And that's, if you removed, if every single one of the Phoenix died on the map right now, MaNa would still have about the same amount of army supply as Gerald. Maybe a little bit more still. So that just kind of goes to show how much of a dominating position right now MaNa actually does have over Gerald, because he also does have the Phoenix alive, and he also is going to be able to continuously poke in over here, try and snipe off a couple of probes here and there, and continue to maintain that worker advantage.
Really, I'm curious. Is MaNa really just going to go literally mass charge Phoenix? He's only getting +2. There's still no Templar Archive. It's not even a Dark Shrine, you know? Different Archons. Like, is that really going to work? I mean, I feel like eventually a mass amount of Blink Stalkers would actually win. I mean, it'd be like the silliest looking fight, but they would. But MaNa's still sticking with it, grabbing a couple of probes. The Phoenix, always going to be a threat, even with a decent number of Blink Stalkers, continuing to have that economic lead. And then usually you'd say you'd be putting into it with technology and more expansions, but 3 base to 3, tons of gateways coming down, not taking his additional gases. MaNa really is just going to go for a charge Phoenix, like almost all in.
A little awkward there. The DT is doing to slip by straight past MaNa's army because the Observer didn't have to go around the bend in order to make it past that little dead airspace area. But MaNa has a second Observer back at home, has a cannon with a shield battery around as well. So MaNa's going to be A-okay on the defense, and on the offense, well, let me tell you something, guys. That's a lot of charge lots to have to deal with. That shield battery overcharge is going to keep things alive for a little bit, but how long really?
Yeah, if Gerald could have maybe sliced this army up and dealt with the Phoenix first and then the charge lots or vice versa, he certainly have a shot. But everything together and without his knowing too, like it was literally natural, and that's when he scouted it, or that's when he, I guess, knew the trigger was pulled. Yeah, that's too much damage to take. So Gerald now down at half the supplies, forced to tap out, given a map to MaNa, and I guess given that chance that MaNa can win the best of 3 series. But it's so nice. I'll get into after the intros. In the bottom left, as the team Liquid Blue Protoss, he is MaNa.
And over here in the top right-hand side of the map, we have the red Protoss player from Team Exxon. He is Gerald.
Oh, actually being able to get the sound is kind of a big deal. But, you know, Showtime needs to come to mind immediately. And then maybe depending on, like, how well he was playing that day, MaNa came to mind afterwards. Like, but now it's really questionable. Now it's, you know, Skillus and Hellraiser and even Christiana and Gerald, like all these guys who are just kind of barely qualifying, it feels like at the beginning of the year, are now the ones actually advancing.
Yeah, it's been, I really, really enjoy just seeing that kind of growth in the scene where, again, like that's one of the big fears sometimes people will have it, like, oh man, like we just see the same names over and over and over again. When are we going to see the new generation popping up? And we've been seeing the signs of them, especially with this new format for DreamHack SC2 Masters, where it is not just top 16 or something for like Europe coming in. It's like top 32. You get to see some depth to the region, and you get to see some of these players showcase their skill levels, get that experience on those stages. And I actually really like the way you also put it, where it's not just one season they just show up and it's like, oh my God, I'm killing everybody now. It's like, it's a little bit of that gradual growth you get to see across each season. You see them get some of that experience, maybe not have like the best run, then next season they do better. Next season, hey, it's like, Skillus, where are you at? That's sick.
You know what, Fear Dragon? Protoss might be not winning championships, but they got quantity. There's going to be a lot of Protoss.
In Europe, it certainly is true.
Anyways, hopefully there's a European Protoss champion, I guess, one day. Right now, it's kind of the top 2 dogs, right? Cyril and Raynor, and then maybe Clem.
Well, you know, Protoss players are just like, you know, this Zerg thing, like Zerging your opponent with just lots of units. We should try that, but with players instead of the race.
The amount of players, amazing. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, it looks like Raynor is able to take out Denver, which isn't too surprising. But not much else, I guess. We're literally watching the end result of this group, in fact. So it seems like we do have our top 4 pretty much determined. As far as this actual game, there was that kind of cute thing where, like, it's Oxide, a natural ramp map. We did have both of them. Well, MaNa wanted to push for the gateway expand, and then I think Gerald was like, I bet he'll do it again. So he tried to block, didn't work, but then he also only did his 1 gate expand as well. Then a follow-up difference was that Gerald bothered getting a second gateway, whereas MaNa was like, nah, I'm good. So he went right into, well, a Stargate, but then also a Robo. So this could actually be interesting. The Oracle could do some damage, first of all. We'll watch this. How much? Just a couple of probes. We'll zap.
Yeah. Gonna find the probe. Oh, that's actually a noteworthy one, or it would be more noteworthy if there were adepts on this side of the map, but gets the probe that was ready to build a shield battery as well, so Gerald might have to remember to actually replace that in case he wants to deal with adepts later on, but got enough gateway units now that it shouldn't be a massive problem, and MaNa's not exactly poached forward with a couple of adepts ready to move in, so I think it should be okay. Still, some pretty good damage there.
Yeah, he secured a worker lead, although it is a very small one. So I said that robo opening could be interesting, but it looks like it's not what I thought it might be. They get a gas added on in Twilight Council and Forge, but when it's not really common nowadays to try and get to a robo that quickly, you know, because everyone's going into Blink. No one really wants to do the immortal charge lot. And then with the shield battery, I guess, and the void ray response to some of the earlier cheeses that used to plague PvP.
Oh, sentry.
That also didn't seem to really matter as much for the robo opener. Yeah, the adepts actually getting in can be a big deal. Oh, truck? No, okay.
Yeah.
Good
attack. I don't blame MaNa for that, of course, because he was trying to micro the Oracle and get the stasis trap while focus firing down probes. Wouldn't have minded if he had just gone after the sentry, because there is only that one sentry there for Gerald, so that actually would have shut down a lot of scouting information, but yeah, small things.
Agreed on that. But to bring us back to my point, like, so you don't usually see it. So sometimes we have seen players sneak it in and then try and like specifically not get scouted, you know, actually snipe a sentry, for instance, and then try and go for a warp prism attack where they actually just continue to warp in. You know, they don't ever stop to build technology. But if MaNa was planning on doing that, he certainly has changed his mind. Third Nexus comes up. He is going to go into Blink and +1, which is also a bit of a question in my mind for a second there, because he was building up to 3 Immortals. I was like, oh, are you going to do Charge Immortal Archon? What's going on here? But nope. They're going to be playing a similar composition eventually, but then MaNa's going to have a stronger, like, direct fighting force, I suppose, a dependable fighting force compared to, well, if Gerald goes into Disruptors, right?
Okay. Yeah, I got a little excited there because I'm like, that shield battery body blocks the probes from escaping quickly. So I was like, oh, maybe. No, not going to happen. But yeah, I like the way you were saying that they're eventually going to get to that point. There is going to be a fun little period right before that where it is that heavy immortal count over here from MaNa. And what gets a little bit weird about that is that MaNa's army is really, really good in one position in one fight. And he is now going to be somewhat spread across these 3 different bases on a map where you can blink up into the main base and everything if you have that high ground vision. So it'll be interesting to see if Gerald can find the ways to exploit that. But so far, with the Stalkers so backed off, actually hunting down the Oracle, and going to be able to find it. That's a nice pickoff. But not going to be able to put on a lot of harassment, it looks like, with these Blink Stalkers for now.
It can be really scary for a guy in Gerald's position to see that many Immortals, because even though they can be played around and micro ability like goes into Gerald's favor, the Immortals should be able to tear apart quite a few Stalkers. And that's exactly what MaNa's thinking. He's going for a push. He's finished up a decent amount of gateways. It's not really all in, but it's, you know, it's a bit dedicated. And you can't really retreat with the Immortals, that's for sure, so they would be lost. And if there's charge, then the Immortals also aren't that as powerful as you would hope. There is charge, but are there enough charge lots? And Gerald's trying to come in from the backside. He wanted the Warp Prism, but it's being controlled. Gerald actually will not find it, and his Zealots really didn't do a whole lot of damage on the other side.
No, the Zealots completely on their own, like you were saying, really not able to do a whole lot. The Immortals still very much so alive. The Warp Prism gonna be able to warp in even more units over here. The Zealots are tearing through some of these Stalkers, but with some good micro, MaNa keeps it all alive. He's gonna be able to snipe off the Warp Prism. He warps in even more Stalkers, keeps these Stalkers from Gerald even further back, and that's gonna be the game. MaNa goes down swinging.